Welcome back to Digital Leap, the podcast where we help businesses and societies leap into a digitally superior future, all while bridging the technological divides and fostering inclusivity among diverse communities. Dive deep into the world of cutting-edge technologies, human-centeredness in tech, design thinking, and digital transformations with us. I'm your host, Faizan Qureshi, joined by my co-host, Omar Chowdhury, and I'm honored to introduce our special guest today, Don Stanford, a distinguished figure in the world of technology and innovation. With a career spanning 4 decades, Don's journey has been marked by remarkable achievements and contributions to the field of digital transformations. He is a founding member of GTech Corporation, now known as IGT Global Solutions, where he most recently held the positions of Chief Innovation Officer and Technology Fellow. Don's leadership has been instrumental in growing GTech's technology organization from a small team to a global powerhouse, particularly in the lottery gaming industry. He's not only a visionary leader, but a dedicated educator, serving as a professor at Brown University, where he has been teaching undergraduates about the digital world since 2002. We truly are amongst a living legend. Today on our podcast, Digital Leap, we have the privilege of delving into Don Stanford's wealth of experience and knowledge in the context of digital transformation. We'll explore how he has played a pivotal role in advancing technology, fostering innovation, and navigating the ever-evolving digital landscape.
Pleasure to have you with us, Professor.
It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to start off with our first question. We want to learn a bit more about your career. Can you share your journey from being the manager of software development at GTech to your current or your previous role as Chief Innovation Officer and Technology Fellow? And how has GTech's transformation mirrored your own career evolution?
Well, it's been an interesting ride over 40 years. When I joined the group, we had 7 employees located above an Italian restaurant in downtown Providence. We had about 1,000 square feet of space, and we had a contract with the state of Rhode Island to install a electronic online lottery system for the then very small, nascent Rhode Island lottery. We did that in 1978, and then successfully in the middle of a huge snowstorm, and we were able to prove that the technology worked, and under pretty trying circumstances, and we immediately won another contract in the state of Connecticut. I had 4 software developers on the team at that time, 2 of whom didn't speak a word of English, and I had another one who didn't speak to anyone at all for any reason whatsoever, and that was the team that we transformed into success. Those early 2 contracts established us as a credible supplier to what was then a very nascent industry in the United States. There weren't very many jurisdictions that had lotteries, and the ones that did were basically operating them using paper. And our idea was to basically create an electronic network where transactions could be sent in from retail locations with a terminal securely, and be tabulated so that we knew exactly how many winners there were, who were the winners, and they could be paid securely, which was a real problem with the paper-based system. We proved that concept in those first 2 contracts, and after that, lotteries around, or organizations around the entire country started evolving into lotteries. So states would recognize the value of having a lottery to raise money for public good, and they would issue RFPs. We would bid on those RFPs, and given our knowledge and our ability to execute, I guess, we started winning those contracts at about a 70% rate, and so we quickly established ourselves as the experts in the United States for transforming lotteries from paper-based modes into fully electronic, secure mode. And then early on in our evolution, we got inquiries from lotteries overseas, especially in the Far East and in Australia. And so our first international contracts were in Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, places like that, where, again, lotteries were very popular, but they needed a technical solution to secure them and allow them to operate at maximum efficiency. And then that evolution continued into the late 80s when we got inquiries from Europe, and we launched the first European electronic lottery in Sweden in 1988. And again, based on that success, the rest of the Scandinavian lotteries all showed up at our door, and we successfully implemented systems in all those places. And then we got into mainland Europe And this culminated in 1994 when the United Kingdom, which did not have a lottery, decided to establish a national lottery.
Wow.
And we, with our partners, our British partners, won that job, that contract, and basically brought up the largest lottery on the planet in the United Kingdom, which today has over 40,000 points of sale and operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Professor, if I may add, the journey that you just told us about, it's very inspirational. So I had two questions based on this. So as you said, that you had a very humble start, right? There was a team of 7 people, in a small apartment office on the first floor, right, where you started off. So number one, could you tell us about the entrepreneurial journey? What was the motivation power? What was the vision behind the endeavors that you were basically envisioning, right? And how did you motivate that team? Because at times there are so many technopreneurs over here watching this podcast, so many aspiring entrepreneurs. So what's the most important thing that they should have in mind when they're in an initial phase, the way you were? So that's the first question. And please.
Well, one of the advantages we had is that there was a identified job to be done. In other words, we weren't shooting at a moving target. We were shooting at something that was definitely needed to be fixed and was waiting for a solution. And so our focus was on engineering the solution based on what we could see was happening in the marketplace and based on inquiries from organizations that wanted to be running lotteries but didn't have the technological assets and know-how to do so. And so there was a void. There were lotteries all over the world operating on these paper-based systems. So our job was clearly to effectively close off all of the security problems, performance problems, and maximize the overall efficiency of being able to sell chances to people in the public and then tabulate them and then immediately have a drawing and calculate all the winners, okay, and the prizes that should be laid out. So we weren't shooting in the dark. We weren't creating something that there was any doubt about its potential effectiveness in the marketplace. But we had to be absolutely execution eagles in terms of doing it properly and doing it right, because you're playing with a lot of money here. You're playing with the public trust and very high visibility in terms of regulation. So no screw-ups. And that was our foremost thing, is got to be on time, online on time. We got to deliver when we say we're going to deliver, and it has to work perfectly. Because if it doesn't, all of a sudden the newspapers are going to be on the story, and when you're dealing with games of chance and huge amounts of money, I don't know if you just saw somebody won $1.7 billion on Powerball. And,
that was huge.
All right, by the way, that was on a GTEC system in California. So when you're fooling around with that kind of money, I mean, there's no room for error. Mm-hmm. And so motivation was to get it, do it right, close all of the gaps. And although there's no such thing as a perfect system or perfect software, we would quickly fix anything that we could identify that wasn't working optimally. And so effectively, there was no problem with motivating our team because we all were glued together. And we knew that if we screwed up, I mean, our chances of existing going forward were nil. As it was, the third week after I joined the group, a guy showed up from the power company, Narragansett Electric, to turn off the electricity because we hadn't paid the power bill. And we actually took a collection in the office and paid a $600 power bill so that we could keep everything running and keep development going. Because if they turned the power off, sometimes it could take weeks to get it back. And we couldn't afford anyone to shut us down. We also had to find the right computer systems. We started this business using 16-bit PDP-11 systems, which just didn't have the horsepower. So we had to identify a 32-bit system that we could migrate to, which we did successfully, which also gave us a lot of flexibility and impetus in solving some of the technical issues that are inherent in this industry. So it was an interesting journey. Oh, by the way, I had to constantly worry about bringing in new resources that we could train up and make effective in terms of our ability to grow. So, human beings were the lifeblood of this enterprise. And so hiring people, my philosophy was we hire right out of college and we train them to do the job that needs to be done. All right, and then we give them a passport, and we send them wherever they got to go to be close to the customer, understanding what the needs are in a particular jurisdiction, and working with a more experienced team who would bring them up to speed.
Professor, if I may add, what was the rationale behind like using this HR strategy rather than just like hiring experienced individuals?
Well, first of all, we needed people who could learn our architecture and our system from scratch in the shortest amount of time, and didn't come with a lot of, let's say, preconceived notions about what this system had to do or how we should architect it to do it. We needed people that we could effectively, who had the right aptitude and attitude about working on a new industry with long hours, with crazy deadlines, all over and as I said, we were growing all over the world, so I had to have somebody I could literally give a passport to, a plane ticket, and send them away for 6 months.
Wow.
And in many cases, that was their, I would say, on-the-job training. They would learn by doing, along with some more experienced developers. And so we built our workforce like that. I'm still going now to retirement parties of people that I hired out of college 40 years ago.
Wow.
All right.
They've retired.
They've retired. Wow. All right. After 40 years. All right. And I hired them as their first job out of college. But that turned out to be a very successful strategy for us.
And Professor, were they like still with the company when they were retiring? Because I guess the affiliation that you get with a specific company, if it's your first job right after college, is huge.
Yeah, well, for many of these people, not only is it their first job, it's their only job. They grew up with the company and became major contributors, okay, to the technology, to the product, to the capabilities of the company. And so, for instance, when I retired, okay, there was no question about who was going to carry the ball. We had a very experienced team of people who had grown up with the company. Some of them had started as programmers, coders, software and hardware engineers, and some of them, their careers, some of them went into marketing or operations. So effectively, there was a lot of potential careers available to them other than just the one they started with the company with, because we were growing and we had to develop capabilities in all aspects of the lottery operation, including marketing, game design, you name it. We did it all.
And if I could follow up on that, like, clearly we're identifying 4 decades that your extensive and admirable career, along with a lot of those people that you hired, during that time, huge transformations in digital technology.
Yep. So
how can you just describe how you personally adapted to stay ahead of the fast-paced digital landscape?
So this is a bit of a tug of war, because you're so busy executing on commitments you've made, which requires absolute focus, that group of people at that moment in time, first of all, don't have the ability or even the remit to bring in new technology. You've got to bring in proven stuff that's already proven that is going to work for that particular installation, that job. Meanwhile, on the side, you have to have another group of people, I call them the advanced development team, that would be looking at emerging technologies, emerging things that we might be able to incorporate into our solutions, and having that group vet out the technology, basically build prototypes, proof of concepts. Sometimes we would hire students to work on projects with us on things that we didn't have the time to devote a lot of people to, but we needed to get some idea as to whether it was even a viable solution for us, especially in software engineering. So we basically would have these separate tiger teams that would look at the future technologies while we were busy executing on the current technology for our customers. Because our customers were interested in one thing and one thing only: 100% security, 100% uptime.
Wow. Professor, I had a question, very quick question. You mentioned about the emerging technologies, and then you also said that you had a team of dedicated, passionate individuals who would foresee these trends and then specifically design some tech around those trends, right? So we usually have a misconception that, if you have a technology, it's going to do well, right? But then there's so many other things that go beyond that technology as well, like the market research you need to do, the need identification that you need to do, the human-centric element that we were talking about. Could you like expand more on the human-centric element behind tech, and how much of a role does it play in the success of a tech?
Well, in my graduate class, I actually use a book as the introduction to the course, and it's called "Competing with Luck." It's written by Clayton Christensen. It was his last book before he passed away, but it basically talks about that exact issue. You can design anything you want based on your idea of what the market wants, but if you don't really understand, okay, what the customer is trying to gain from using your product, your process, your idea, then there's only about a 50% chance that you will be successful in the marketplace. So there have been lots of innovators or would-be innovators who have gone off and designed something that they thought that everyone would die to have, but only to find out that it missed the mark for some reason. And it's usually not because of technology, it's because they don't understand what the customer's real needs are. And so this book, Competing Against Luck, talks about what's called the jobs to be done, JTBD. Okay, identifying from the customer's viewpoint, taking into account social, cultural, all these other needs other than the technology itself before you go off and start building and designing something. And so we had to learn how to do that. We had to learn because, after all, we were all smart young people at that time, and we, our own masters of the universe. But we quickly learned that, in fact, talking to the end customer and getting their viewpoint, for instance, the people that buy lottery tickets, what do they see us as? When they walk into a shop that sells lottery, okay, what is their perception of the product? Okay, is it a product that they can trust? Is it well displayed? Is the retailer knowledgeable about different things that they could do, options with a game? Is there literature that explains how the lottery works? All these other things all work into the fabric of success. My job was to make sure their computers worked. Fine, that was great, but everyone took for granted that the computers had to work. There was no question about that. All the things that actually worked in terms of expanding the sales of the lottery and making it something that people really trusted and respected, that was a whole nother set of things that we had to master along with the technology. And in some cases, we had to develop technology to satisfy those needs. So I'll tell you one perfect example. Early on, when the game of Lotto came to this country, the way you played Lotto is you had to get a slip.
Professor, we have no idea how to play that.
Lotto is a game. Well, Powerball is the Lotto game. Okay. By the way, Lotto was invented in Italy in the 17th century. Wow. So that's how long the game has been around. But Lotto, you have to pick 6 numbers out of a field of 60 in any order. And it's a very long odds game. And then you split as tickets are bought, some of the money goes into the prize pool to fund that jackpot. If someone wins, okay, they either claim the entire jackpot or they split it with any other winners. Okay, but you have to pick 6 numbers for every bet you would like to place. Well, we designed these slips where players would mark for every game they wanted to play, every chance, they'd have to pick 6 numbers. Well, picking numbers for a human being, all right, is not an easy thing because they have to think about it. What number should I pick? I've got all these numbers to choose from. How do I pick? Well, they use birthdays and they use numbers that are of certain significance, but it takes some work. Yeah. And if you want to play 5 chances, you have to do this 5 times. Okay, and you have to do it correctly for each box that you fill in. Well, this takes a little bit of time, and then it's submitted into a scanner that scans it and turns that into digital information that we send to the computer system. Well, we're in the bar one night down at Capriccio's, the restaurant underneath our little office there, and we were talking about, this issue with players filling out the numbers. And somebody made the astute observation that when you're playing a game like Lotto, where it's 1,000,000 to 1 chances, it doesn't make any difference what numbers you pick. Every bet has the same chance of winning. It doesn't make any difference. And so he said, well, we have a computer system, we have a smart terminal. Why don't we let the system pick the numbers for you?
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Because really, it doesn't make any difference what numbers you really have. In the end, each bet has the same chances of winning or losing.
Professor, I had a very interesting question. How many times had you already played Lotto, and how many times had you already lost in playing Lotto? Because,
Well, being in the Lotto business,
I could sense some personal indifference in this as
being
well.
in the Lotto business, I was never allowed to play the game.
That's on record. Like, what's the actual action?
All right. But so the upshot of this revelation was, since it doesn't make any difference what numbers you play, we could give the player the option to just say, quick pick. Let you pick the numbers. I want to play 5 boards, $1 each, and you pick the numbers. And basically the terminal instantly picks 5 random sets of numbers, and you get a ticket with a random set of numbers. Instant. No fooling around with bet slips. No. And guess what? Now people will play more because it's less work, and they get more chances to win. So today, here we are now, fast forward 40 years. By the way, the next day, we programmed that feature into our prototype system and started demonstrating it to customers. And we called it Quick Pick. And today, every Lotto system in the world has that feature. Wow. And at that last jackpot that we just had in California, $1.7 billion, 90% of all the bets were Quick Pick.
Wow.
So it was a simple understanding of the relationship with the end customer that drove us to that solution. Today, it accounts for about 90% of all bets on Lotto games because people also understand it doesn't make any difference what sets of numbers I have. Let me get as many chances as I can towards winning the game. So again, understanding the customer's needs and what aggravates them filling out all these slips versus giving them an option to just have the machine pick the numbers for them. And in fact, the results are 90% of the players embrace that solution.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to take a step away from the amazing discussions and introduce you to our segment Chai Time.
Okay. Chai. Okay.
So this chai is culturally from the Indian subcontinent.
Okay.
So please join us in having some chai and having some personal conversations as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Danish. So Danish is actually one of our co-hosts, and he usually joins us off and on. And yeah, he actually made us chai. So let's see how are his chai making skills. Let's judge you, Danish.
You made it a bit sweeter.
Is it sweeter? I like sweet chai. Yeah.
Everyone said, I decided today it was a big lump, so we'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed. Let's hope it's good.
Please.
Thank you so much, Danish. Really appreciate it. So Professor, since we're now sharing a cup of chai, so Professor, now that we're having chai, let's talk about some things relatively more personal, right? So you said that you graduated from Brown, you did your bachelor's from Brown and then master's as well. Would you like to share us one personal memory that you still remember from college, like growing up over here, making friends, maybe partying and stuff like that?
Well, I came here in the fall of '68 as a freshman.
Because Professor, we need to tell that even the tech people have lives.
Oh yeah, well I wasn't a tech person as an undergrad so much, though I had a background in technology. From the time I was a little kid, I was involved with science. Just that was my thing, and I got involved with radio when I was about 14 years old. I lived on an island, the island of St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean. We didn't have a television station. We had a single AM radio station. And I met a friend of my parents who ran an appliance business on the island of St. Thomas. And he was what's called a ham radio operator, an amateur radio operator. He had this shortwave station in his home. I saw that. I fell in love with it. And I became licensed as a ham radio operator when I was 14. And so I studied electronics as a hobby. It was my hobby. When I came to Brown, I immediately got a student job at the language laboratory, fixing the equipment in the language lab as a student job. And I did that for 4 years. And when I graduated from Brown, even though I had a degree in international relations, I went to work as a technician fixing electronics, computers. And I went to law school at night in Boston. And I did that for 1 year. And at the end of that 1 year, I was totally burned out working 18-hour days, going to law school, and I said, I have to make a decision. And I made the most important decision in my life. I said, I'm dropping law school, and I'm going to focus on technology.
Wow. So, Professor, we got some like inside information about you. We do know about your love for electronics, but there's another thing as well, transistors. So we hear a lot about whenever someone's talking about Professor Don, they always refer to the transistors. So what's this relationship that you have with transistors?
Well, I point out to my students, keep in mind the undergraduate students in my course are not tech majors for the most part. But they do want to understand how the digital world works. And of course, if we look at the hierarchy of, I call it the Uber stack of technology, the very first thing is the laws of physics. Mm-hmm. And then the next layer is the materials that are put to work to take advantage of those laws of physics. And those materials are invariably something that's called silicon, which is used to make transistors. Transistors were invented in 1947 at Bell Labs, and effectively it takes advantage of certain known properties of materials, against the laws of physics. And effectively the transistor, when it was invented and now has been refined, is clearly the most important discovery of the 20th century. It is the number one invention of the 20th century. Why? Because everything that we have today is built on top of transistors. Everything that's going on right now in this room, all this this recording equipment, everything would not be possible without the invention of the transistor. And so that's kind of ground zero. To understand how computers work and technology works, you have to kind of at least have basic understanding of how transistors have enabled that. So today we're creating chips that have 30 billion, that's billion with a B, transistors in a single package. Think about that. The first transistor in the laboratory at Bell Labs was the size of a can of Coca-Cola. One transistor, one prototype transistor. Now we're putting 30 billion of them in a single integrated circuit inside a laptop computer. And so the immense computing power that we now have, the ability to even record this podcast in audio and video, is made possible by the fact that effectively we have refined the ability to put so many transistors together in a single, small, affordable package that makes all of this technology work. Gordon Moore, the founder of Intel, observed back in 1965 that even back then, every year, they could put twice as many transistors in the same amount of space for the same amount of cost, which meant that every 18 to 24 months, we doubled our computing power for the same cost. And so we are now the manifestation of this. So the ability to have a cell phone, which has tens of billions of transistors in it, and does 90 different things, including everything our laptop does, is possible because of our ability to integrate that many transistors into such a small space reliably and have it compute at an unbelievable level of speed compared to where we started with this technology.
So, Professor, we heard about your love for transistors. I would like to know, since we're sharing a cup of chai, right, and for our viewers as well, I would like to know, how did the Friday nights and the Saturday nights look like back in Brown during the 80s and the 90s?
Oh, it was a much different environment.
Really?
Yeah, there was a lot more partying and drinking on campus than there is now. In fact, my first entrepreneurship actually was at Brown when I was a junior in a fraternity in what is now called Chapin House. I had a bar in the basement. And it was called Big D's Luau Hut.
You need to revive that.
It was called Big D's Luau Hut. And we would open the bar on Saturday nights after a big basketball game or a hockey game. And we would stay open until 2 a.m. until the campus security would close us down. and I served exotic cocktails, Singapore slings, banana daiquiris. You could also get a real drink there, just a straight drink. Drinks were 50 cents, and we would probably serve 300 or 400 drinks on a good Saturday night.
I want to go back to that
at the Luau Hut. Okay, that kind of behavior would no longer be tolerated on the Brown campus. Okay, but this was the '60s, you know. So And it was a different time.
Good
It was
60s.
a different time.
I think sometime during the 60s as well, there was a ban on frats being off campus as well.
Yes, all the frats were on campus.
Yeah, but I remember before the 60s, there was actually an issue with the city of Providence and Brown University.
Yeah, there might have been, because we're in a residential neighborhood here and everything else. All the frats were on campus in the quads in those days. And actually, while I was a member of my frat, we actually became a co-ed dorm. So we actually transformed literally in those years.
So you were basically from the revolutionary batch. You were from the revolutionary
Yeah,
class.
we were. But I ran this bar. I had a slot machine, not a slot machine. I had a jukebox, a pinball machine, and a pool table, which I rented from an amusement company downtown, which was actually run by the mob. Okay, and every Thursday, a guy would show up and open up the machines, and he and I would split the quarters. And I was making about $40 a week in quarters from the money that was going into these machines. And then again on Saturday nights, we would open up the Luau Hut bar in the basement. And around 2 a.m., one of the security guys that we knew really well, his name was Lieutenant Peters. Okay, God bless him. He would come and say, "Time to wrap it up."
Professor still remembers his name as well.
I knew him for years. All right, wrap it up, and we would basically have a last call.
Yeah.
And that would be it. And we would wrap up at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
So that was Brown in the 70s, early 70s.
One of the key takeaways that we get from a serial entrepreneur is that you have to enjoy life in campus. That's one of the key takeaways.
So my first entrepreneurship had nothing to do with transistors or technology or lotteries. It was basically, but we found a need. All right, we had no lack of customers. We found a job to be done. All right, and that was to serve high quality drinks at a reasonable price.
Professor, moving on from those high quality drinks and stressing more about the need identification process and then merging it with the tech involved, that basically was that is basically what you did in the future as well. Right, I would like to ask a question about the digital transformations, because we know that right now we're living in a digital age. We're digital natives to a great extent, right? And digital transformation is something that each and every industry, no matter the nature of that industry, may it be real estate, may it be healthcare, may it be education, you name it, it would have some sort of implementation as far as digital transformation goes, starting from design all the way to display, to discover, to develop, deploy, and defend. Right? So how would you use these 6 Ds, which basically define digital transformations, specifically different industries, and what do you think is the importance of these digital transformations relative to these industries?
Well, so digital trends. So if we even look at GTech, we were in the digital transformation business. We didn't call it that, but we were converting people from paper-based systems to electronic transaction systems in pursuit of securing the lottery industry. So the job was to secure the lottery industry. Doing what we did with digital technology turned out to be the method by which we got there. Today, there's been this big PR push by just about every industry to figure out how they would do a certain amount of digital transformation. Some of them have been very well thought out. Some of them have been disastrous. General Electric, one of the largest, most successful companies in the world, for years talked about their digital transformation, which actually went terribly wrong. It was actually a case study in how not to do it, because what they basically did is they did it without consulting the end users of their systems to determine exactly what the criteria were by which they needed to be. And so they had a big false start.
This is the importance of human-centric
They had a very big false start. God. But I don't know, you may not remember this, but just a few years ago, General Electric was advertising during primetime on TV about GE Digital.
Yeah, I know.
GE Digital. And the average consumer watching the TV had no idea what they were talking about. Okay? But basically what they wanted to do is provide the capability of everyone that bought their high-tech industrial systems, jet engines, gas turbines, all this good stuff that GE supplied to all these industries. They basically wanted to upgrade all of that equipment with software called predictable software that would enable people to do preventive maintenance on those complex systems, thereby saving lots of money in downtime and repairs. And so basically by putting in digital technology in jet engines and tractors and everything you can possibly imagine, and then connecting it to Predix software, GE basically said to their customer base, pay us a little extra and we'll give you this capability, and we will tell you when you have to service that jet engine before it blows up. And we will save you money, and you're going to pay us a percentage of that savings. That was their whole proposition. And it was this enormous digital transformation strategy that they had. Well, of course, they didn't prepare their own workforce on how to sell it to the industry, to their customers. And they had a pricing strategy that didn't really work. Plus, they had a lot of resistance inside the company. It wasn't well thought out and sold internally. And so it turned out to be a big mess. And they had to do it twice. They have finally figured it out. For a lot of companies, small companies, owner-operated companies, I mean, going digital means basically getting on the internet, right? And being able to sell, advertise, promote, educate your customers digitally through the internet, as opposed to printing documents and sending books and doing things like that, or having seminars on Zoom. So that's kind of a basic, well, let me just get closer to my customer strategy. And then some people have looked at what they're selling and they have found the pain points. And that's the most important thing. If you can identify pain points that your customers have, you can create small little transformations that solve those problems to great degree. And one of my favorites, and I happen to be a customer for it, is Hewlett-Packard with the introduction of e-ink. So what is e-ink? All right. Well, what's the problem with home printers? Buying the supplies, right? Going to Staples and paying $50 for an inkjet cartridge. Yeah. Okay, it's annoying that you have to go and buy it. Okay, they charge you $50 for this thing. The printer only costs $75, and here you're paying $50 for a cartridge. Well, e-ink eliminates all that. You sign up, your printer is online. They can look at your printer, okay, every day. They look at the ink levels in your printer, and they replenish the print ink for you automatically. And they do that through a subscription. So basically you subscribe for so many pages a month, and included in that is the e-ink service. And what happens is you get a notification that we have just sent you a cartridge because we've detected that the magenta cartridge is low. We've sent you a cartridge. Oh, by the way, you get a mailer to mail the empty cartridge back so they can recycle it and reuse it again, as opposed to throwing it away. So they've closed the loop. They get the bad old cartridge back. You get ink before you've run out of ink because they know exactly how much ink you've got left and how fast you're using it. So the ink comes to you automatically, and it's all covered under this simple subscription plan, and you don't go to Staples anymore and drop $50 for a cartridge. Simple, part technical, part customer, understanding the customer's pain point, and coming up with a wonderful solution. That, to be quite frank with you, I wouldn't go anywhere. If I ever buy another printer, I will buy a Hewlett-Packard printer, if for no other reason that they have this e-ink service. Now, you can be sure all the other guys have copied that also. But it solves a small little problem related to the big thing. And it's, to me, one of my favorite examples of a digital transformation, because they identified this single little pain point that basically created what we call the job to be done. The job to be done was to take the pain of dealing with cartridges out of the equation.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to stress exactly on what the professor said, and I really enjoyed the response that you had to this question that I made, because it's all about like identifying those customer pain points and then adding value based on those pain points, because we, in a way, technology is not independent of us now. It's a constant to every human being now, right? And it's all about adding value to that human being through that tech. And if you don't have the customer-centric approach at heart, you cannot succeed in any endeavor that you make. And that is exactly what we believe. And like, I would like to share this design thinking approach, right? Which we usually refer to. I myself have experience in that, and it usually tells about the same problem solving approach, right? Starting from empathy, empathizing with the customer to actually know their main pain points, right? Getting those main points and then ideating on those pain points and then getting that customer feedback based on those. You said, as you said, you also referenced about the MVPs, the proof of concepts, and if that proof of concept works, and how would you know if it works or not? The customer, the
Will
end
tell you.
user would
The
tell you.
customer
Right?
will tell you.
And if it works, just invest in it, because that is what is actually going to add value to the.
Sometimes organizations get very far into the development phase before they recognize that they are lacking that customer input. And in fact, they have to actually back up and go and redo major portions of what they're working on, because they never considered what the end user was going to think about this thing. I mean, it could be something as basic as the color, the shape, the size, the weight, okay, how it connects to the internet, how do you replenish the ink? All these little things go into the customer experience. People talk about innovation all the time, but innovation is basically finding a new way to add value. Finding a new way to add value. If you cannot add value, I don't care how great the idea was, it's not an innovation. Because it is missing the most important part, which is adding value to the customer's experience. Customers buy things because they are trying to accomplish certain things in their lives, and the thing that they're buying, they think will help them accomplish some job that they have in their life to be done. And if your innovation does not address those things, you only have a 50% chance of being successful in the market.
Yeah. And I think right now the most important thing is that fusion between that human-centric consultancy and that stress on cutting-edge digital technologies in order to architect our digital future.
In the lottery business, so our customer was the state or national lottery organization that we supplied the technology and the operations to. But in reality, our real customer was the consumer on the street that would walk into a convenience store and buy a lottery ticket. That is our real customer, and figuring out their pain point was essential to our success, and making that ability to go and buy a lottery ticket as painless as possible. We even at one point enabled gas pumps with quick pick buttons. So that effectively, while you're putting gas in your car, you didn't have to go into the convenience store to buy the lottery ticket. You could buy it right at the pump. Wow. So that's, again, looking at consumer behavior, because a lot of people fill their own cars, right? Self-service, okay? But they don't go in the store.
Professor Don coming up with his innovative ideas. We have a lot to learn from him.
So we did pilot programs on saying if we could sell a lottery ticket at the pump, and look at the new gas pumps. They have touch screens, right? They're full-on computers. They're connected to the internet. So, I mean, they're fully capable of doing what we want them to do. And how do we position that, okay, from a consumer standpoint, while they're sitting there for 5 minutes pumping gas, all right, with nothing to do on their hands, all right? You could advertise any number of things, okay, that you could get them to do while they're there.
Yeah, and just so before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on our commitment to working with diverse communities.
Sure.
So you've been actively involved in community service, receiving awards such as the Thurgood Marshall Award.
Yeah.
How has your passion for technology intersected with your commitment to community development and service?
So I look back on my life and my career, and I can say that a large part of my success was the mentorship that I received from other people, support of my parents, but support of people who I learned from. So when I went to work at Raytheon, that became kind of my tech school. I had lots of good mentors there. I learned a lot of things that I only had a vague idea of when I started. And effectively, I was able to take that experience forward with me into the entrepreneurship that was GTech and beyond. I very much believe that we all have a duty to pay it forward. And so I got involved in 1996. We started Rhode Island's first charter school, Times Square Academy, which is a STEM school on the south side of Providence. It's a K-12 school focused on science, technology, and mathematics. And so I was one of the founders of that school and stayed involved with it for 20 years. And we have had students graduate from that school and come to Brown on full scholarships. So I feel good that we have kind of achieved our mission there in trying circumstances. I'm also a member of the board of Year Up. Year Up takes young individuals, high school graduates between the ages of 18 and 26, and prepares them for jobs in the corporate world, both in a technical track or customer service track. And again, we've had hundreds of students go through that program, and they all are making good money and good jobs in 40 of Rhode Island or Southern New England's best companies, many of which are working in IT and have real careers at $25 an hour starting salary, which is excellent compared to what they were doing before they went into the program. So it's a one-year boot camp. That program, Year Up, now operates in 25 cities around the world. So it's not just exclusive to Rhode
Very
Island.
impressive.
Started in Boston, came to Rhode Island, and now operates across the country and graduates thousands of students into the corporate world every year. So those are kinds of things, those are my pet passions in trying to basically provide opportunity to people just the same way as I had opportunities presented to me through my early years. So it's an important part that I think we all have to play in a community, is to enable other people to grow.
Thank you for joining us on Digital Leap. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube, podcast platforms, and LinkedIn, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. Stay tuned for more episodes every Wednesday where we continue to bridge the technological divides and foster inclusivity among diverse communities. Join us next week as we discuss soft skills in tech with a special alumni guest. Until next time.